And the other brief is written by Neha Kumar together with Agnes Kisumbing, so I highly recommend these briefs. But let us now turn to Neha Kumar, who is a research fellow with IFPRI's Poverty, Health and Nutrition Division. Neha, you have done intensive research, especially on the issue of gender. Can you share some of your key insights from your research on this topic, please?
Thanks, Regina. Just kind of following on what Professor Thora talked about and going within the household and looking at what's going on at the household level. I'll make two brief points, and none of what I'm going to say is new, but I'm going to say it because it's essential to the discussion around resilience, so please bear with me. It's often assumed that when shocks occur, they affect individuals within the household in the same way, but that's not always the case. In fact, men and women within the same household actually face different risks. And even when they face different risks, face the same risks, these risks affect them in different ways. And here's how. The first distinction is at a very basic and biological level. Depending on where in the life cycle women and girls are, they can be at greater risk for micronutrient malnutrition or poor health. And there can be risk of maternal mortality, a risk that men will never face. Secondly, there are gender norms that define gender roles within the household. So, for example, women are assigned to take care of household members, and if somebody in the household is sick, it's often the woman who's required to look after them, increasing their time burden. And lastly, there's now growing literature on the gender gap in asset ownership, which not only says that women tend to own smaller quantities of assets within the household, but also that they own different kinds of assets, which has implications for exposure to different risks for them. So all of these factors, along with the finding that not all individuals in the household face the same risk, or in fact pool resources to cope with these risks, leads to the second point that I would like to make, that men and women have different coping mechanisms, some of which are due to different access to certain coping mechanisms. And I'll give you just 3 examples. There are many other that we talk about in our brief. I'll just briefly talk about 3. The first is women are more likely to resort to consumption adjustment strategies, where they reduce the amounts of food that is consumed, or they switch to less preferred foods. And these things have long-term implications for women, children in the household. Secondly, as I pointed out earlier, there's this gender asset gap. And assets are used as buffers against shocks. So if, in the first case, they face this constraint of not having assets to use as buffers, and even when they do, because of the low level of initial asset holdings, they are at greater risk of falling into chronic poverty. Increasing labor supply is yet another strategy of coping with shocks, and in most circumstances, women they don't even have the option of doing that. And when they do, it has serious implications on time burden, childcare activities, and also affects adolescent girls, and all of these have long-term implications. So we just need to be mindful of these differences, not only in terms of exposure, but also the mechanisms they use to cope with these shocks. And I think I'll stop here since I'm out of time.